Got one member of the board who's on his way, so we'll start without him, and he'll catch up with us. The first item of business on our agenda today is the monthly meeting minutes, which were circulated in the packet before the meeting. Any questions or comments about them? Hearing or seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
This is Rich. I'll move it.
Thank you, Rich.
This is Ron, I'll second.
Thank you, Ron. It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Kim Jones is not able to be with us today, so I will handle the small appropriations for this month. That was also in the packet of material that was sent to you. All of the expenditures this month are routine and are similar to the minor appropriations we've been having lately as the project waits to get going. So with that, I'll entertain any questions or comments on the resolution. Sure, it was certain in front of you here. Seeing or hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve these expenditures.
This is Ron, I'll make a motion to approve the expenditures.
Thank you, Ron, and we've had a second from Sean. Any other questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Okay, approved. I'm going to change things up a little bit here because we've got a couple of resolutions for extending work to be done by people who are currently with us and by Watts. But that's going to be subject to our ability to access further funding, because we will have expended the funding we have available to us before these agreements are completed. So I wanted to explain and have people understand where we are with respect to the expenditures and with respect to the revenue, rather, the funds available to us, and what it is we'll have to do if we keep going. So let's start, Kim, with what you've got here up here is the fund ledger. This is the same format, folks, that we've had before, and it is the way to explain to you the money that's either available to the board to use or available for closing out phase 2. And then there are a couple other items there that we'll review. But Kim, why don't you go through that so that we set the base here for where we are with the funds?
Sure, Chairman Richards. For the overall fund balance, the East Bond Fund was not changed at all, $395,233. District-wide Technology 2B was decreased by the payments from the last pay rec. Forbes School 4 still has a balance of $20,590. The settlement for the Attorney General was untouched at $377,025. The settlement for CPL was also untouched at $205,421, leaving the balance for the bond fund at $5,831,814. The RCSD loan balance was decreased by the pay rec down to $402,914. The following open contract balances for Bond, Shonik and King under DWT 2B is $8,671.35. Freed Maxic has a balance of $1,850, and we did receive an invoice from them that will be reflected in the next pay rec. 7 engineers had a balance of $9,265.36. Von Schoening King under East has a net balance of $9,922.14. And Canon Design under East has $359,296.97, for a total of $389,005.82.
Okay, keep going. Whoever just signed on, I'd appreciate if you go on mute. We're getting some interference.
Yeah.
You,
The previous pay requisition was for Von Schoening King for $2,806, leaving a balance under DWT2B for them of $5,865.35. 7 engineers submitted their invoices for $9,171.41, leaving a balance of $93.95. Printing Plus had an invoice for $159 for a total of $12,136.41. The RCSD loan was debited for Trinity Ventures Engineering, PLLC, for $14,100. For Occasional Elegance LLC for $16,753. For Watts Engineering, $28,220. Rent at 100 Carlson Road for $15,199.55, which constitutes 3 months of rent prepaid. Charter Communications for $251.26, and Frontier for $72.74, for a total of $74,596.55. That results in an RCSD fund balance of $377,025, program bond funds of $271,231, settlement funds balance of $205,421, total program balance of $5,819,678, with a balance for the RCSD loan of $328,318.
okay, if we look at the bottom of the page here, page that you see the new fund balances. The essence of what I wanted to make sure we understood here today is what's available to the board for working on phase 3. The fund balance that shows all the way on the right-hand side, left-hand side, that's the settlement funds that were provided to us by the Attorney General as a result of the phase 1 settlements with various contractors. That money is available to us because there are no restrictions with respect to it. And it wasn't borrowed money, it wasn't bond money that was present. The next item is program bond funds. Those are amounts that are accumulating now as we close out all of the various activities with phase 2. That money is not available for phase 3. What net result of it will be close to that number, and that number will be applied against the debt. So it's not available to us. It's a good thing, and it's important to the district, but it is not something that we can use money to ongoing support of phase 3. Settlement funds balance. These are settlements that are with respect to previous disputes resolved, and there'll be another one that you'll hear today with respect to Canon that will be resolved. Those funds go back into the bond fund part because they're part of phase 2. They're simply ways in which we resolve the final payment for work with respect to that. So that money is not available to us either. It's a good thing again, it helps with the resolution of it, but it's not available to us. And the last, and the total program balance is simply the addition of the two. The last category, is the loan balance. You'll remember that the, district advanced $1 million to the program in order to fund the program, in the interim period of time before the bonds were issued and the debt could be or the debt funding could be acquired. That's money that'll get paid back. It'll be paid out of the bond fund. But it's money available to us for phase 3. That's what's important about the conversation we're having now. So there are two categories of money on that chart that we have some flexibility about, and you're going to hear about both of them today. The first one is the fund balance over on the left-hand side, and the second one is the loan balance over on the right-hand side. And all the money in the middle goes back into the pot and helps to reduce the debt. And so, one of the things we needed to take a look at was where are we going with respect to phase 3? There have been some delays in getting the RFP out and some other issues with respect to that, so that we're not going to have the program manager here as soon as we hope. And we need to keep this thing going. We need to keep it going for two reasons. One, to try not to lose any more time before we get to the point where we can issue bonds and fund it. And that requires a lot of work, and particularly with respect to the controller. So the amount of work that's going to have to go into that is important for keeping the project going, and it's going to take us a while to get ready to do it. It was always anticipated, the way this program is set up, that money would have to be advanced to the program, be paid back by the bonds, because you're required to do all this work to get ready to justify issuing the bonds. And that's the phase we're in right now. There's a second thing going on here that is fortunately consistent with this work. And that is the effort that is going on by the district itself to solidify its facilities and educational plan. The results of which will be, which schools remain open and how those schools will be allocated to various educational programs. This is in addition to whatever the facilities modernization does. I mean, facilities modernization will modify, it looks like now, 6 schools. They'll be part of that larger plan that the district is putting together and hopes to have done this summer and into the fall. But they're working on it now. Some of the work that you're going to hear described here, and some of the work particularly that's being done by Watts, will be necessary and to complete that work that the district is doing. So it has a dual purpose. One, getting us ready to bond with respect to facilities modernization. And number 2, supporting the effort that goes into the district's educational facilities plan. So what we tried to do here is come up with Watts, and I'll discuss that in some more detail later. But we try to come up with some things they could do to keep this whole process going, and also which are consistent with those 2 goals that I talked about. And that's because we didn't want to wait until we got the program manager in place. That now looks like at best will be this summer, and could be even a little longer before they're really up to speed and ready to go. So what Kim did is prepare a budget here that anticipates some extending the people that we're going to talk about in a minute here, along with the other expenses to keep the project moving. That budget, which you can put up, Kim, if you would, goes up here.
Excuse me, Chairman Richards, but President Elliott has a hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. President Elliott, you wanted to?
Yeah, I think I heard you to say that I was going to ask about the timeline for identifying the program manager. And I think you may have mentioned during the summer. Is that what I heard you, Chairman Richards?
Yeah, we're hopeful that the RFP itself will be approved by SED this week, which means we'll go out to request for proposals at the beginning of next week. there's a process that has to go through in order to get the proposals, in order to review them, in order to make a proposal. And then I think, as you remember, the selection needs to be approved by city council, the mayor, by the Board of Education and the superintendent. So getting all of that done and having the program manager up to speed, which will take a little time, we're realistically looking at the summer or maybe even the fall.
Thank you.
That's what gets us to trying to do some things here in the interim. So if you look at this document that Kim has just put up here, the specific numbers are not all that important, but what is important here is to sort of get a directional sense of what kind of money we're going to need in order to keep this thing going. The areas that are colored in yellow here, those are items that are still left over in from phase 2, which can be funded from the bond funds. So they're not ongoing issues with respect to phase 3. They are ongoing issues that'll have to be resolved. Most of them are relatively small, and some of them actually are already resolved, like the free maxed audit is already done. So we'll the other items on here are the things that it takes to keep the operation going here. It also is an estimate of what would take us with respect to the Watts engineering additional work, which I'll discuss in a minute. But the point of this, and the point of showing this to you now, is it becomes obvious when you look at how much money we have left that's available to us with respect to phase 3, and what things are going to cost over here in the ongoing months. You know, by April, we'll be out of money. And we're going to have to fix that by advancing more money. In the past, what happened, the project was farther along, the project manager had been selected, and the city actually did an interim financing to finance the cost of getting the program up and going, which was, if my memory serves me right, is $5 or $10 million. We're not at the point where we can do that yet, so we're going to have to rely on the district to help us with a little interim financing here in order to get us to that point so we can go to the bond funds. Good news is it helps the district too, because it supports their preparation of that facilities education plan that I talked about. So what I wanted to do here before we got to the items that take action with respect to the extension of certain agreements, and discuss it, which we will now, I wanted to give you a sense of where we are here with respect to this. So that means when we approve these extensions today, we'll have to approve them subject to the money becoming available. So, that was a mouthful, I realize, but are there any questions or comments with respect to that? Or maybe it's a good point to stop here.
Yeah, Chairman Richards, this is Ron. A simple question. I assume Landsman Rent is at the Carlson facility?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. I'm good.
That's showing up here now because we were able to ride on the tail of the previous lease for a couple of months, which
Yep.
would have cost anywhere. Now, unfortunately, that ability to do that is run out.
No, this is good. This is good. I like, good. Thank you.
So hearing or seeing nothing else, maybe that'll get us back to the agenda itself. We're asking the board to approve, subject to the availability of the appropriate funding, 2 items. One, the consultants that we use to keep the board itself functioning. That's, you know, Kim Mitchell and Vic Stoffel, who you've seen and who are doing the basic work here to keep this operation going. That's item number 3. I'll come back to it, but the work plan and the cost there is just an extension of their current agreement. There isn't anything new about it. The second item that we are asking you to do, again, subject to the availability of funds, is a Watts SWBR strategic plan proposal. you remember that they were the people that were hired and have supported or developed the work that went into selecting the schools to be modernized, along with some other items with respect to the general circumstances with the facilities of the district. That work is being wound up right now. There's a little bit of work with respect to making sure that the district plans and the facility plan matches. But that will be work run up, and it will be come in under budget and pretty much on time. In fact, we may be a little under budget when we're finished. There are two areas where we want to get Watts to keep working in order to make up for the fact that we won't have a project manager, and we need this information to get to the bond funding and also to support the district. Those areas are with respect to construction estimates. We're going to work through them and using a consultant to estimate scheduling and cost in a much more detailed way than has presently been done for the buildings that are to be renovated, modernized. That's important because that kind of detail will be necessary with respect to the bonding. The controller will insist that we have numbers there that we can be relied on. And scheduling is important as part of that because when you need that'll govern when you need the money. So is at what sequence will these schools be done, and therefore at what sequence would you bond? You're not going to bond the whole thing in the front. You'll do it in tranches, and those tranches will affect where you are in the schedule. It's also important because that one of the outcomes of that ultimately will be the city's, the school district's local share. And the calculation of that local share, which will then go into the budget and against which we will have to work through the whole project. Because one of the things we'll have to share with the controller is that the district can fund the local share. And remember, the district will now be funding 3 local shares, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. My personal view of that is that they can do it. I don't mean to say that it's necessarily an issue, but we're going to have to prove it when we take this to the controller. So that issue is important. The other issue that we have is an environmental issue. We have to do a review of the properties to see whether or not a detailed environmental plan will be necessary. If a detailed environmental plan will be necessary, that could be expensive and extended time. Our hope is that that will not be the case because almost all of the renovation here is occurring in existing facilities. And in fact, most of it inside existing facilities. So we hope that it won't raise that kind of issue. But there's a certain amount of work you got to do with respect to proving that it doesn't require it and getting certain governmental agencies to sign on. Again, that's a kind of an important thing to get going on because we need to know the answer to that early on because it's going to affect how much work we have to do and what the cost of some of these projects will be. So those are the 2 categories of work that we're asking you to extend or to approve. The information with respect to the Watts agreement is in the packet. You did get that in advance. That's been negotiated with the people here at the board, but also with the assistance of people from the district. So why don't I stop there and see if there are any questions or comments with respect to what we're doing.
Chairman, this is Rich Perrin. Something you said about both of these that I don't see in the resolutions, in the now therefore be it resolved sections that I guess I would ask to see if it's worthwhile to insert is the subject to availability of funds. I never think it's a bad idea to put that in there. And either the second or third clauses of both 18 and 19 could be amended to include somewhere in there subject to the availability of appropriate funding or something like that. Again, mentioning or going back to what you mentioned about having funds that were restricted, semi-restricted, and then, eligible for our use for both of these purposes. But under none of the therefore be it resolved clauses, am I seeing anything where it really goes back to the fact of we're entering into these agreements, but payment to the preferred vendors can only occur if we have the availability of appropriate funds.
You're right. One of the things that I intended to do when we get to the point of actually doing something here is to move that phraseology inserted.
Sure.
That it should have been in the first place. And that's one of the reasons I changed the agenda around. When I got reading this, I realized I really needed to deal with it that way. But you're right, Rich.
Yeah, but Chairman Richards, can I just respond to what Richard just said? Now, does that statement mean that if they have completed the work, that if we don't have the funds, they don't get paid? Explain that statement a little bit more for me, please.
Well, if we could play that trick, we'd do it, but we don't intend to. No, it means that we would not be able to authorize any work for them to proceed for which we do not have the funds to pay.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, we do have some funds to pay them, to do some of this work, but not enough to get anywhere close to completing it. So what would happen is if we don't have the funds, we'd have to stop.
Okay,
Either that or they would have an NTP at risk, a notice to proceed at risk, if they felt comfortable that we were going to receive the funds. So if any of those vendors said, I can keep this moving, I see things are in the work with SCD. And again, I personally, when I was a consultant, I would not proceed with SCD, things in the work at SCD, but others may choose to be a little bit more so than I would in terms of keeping it going. Just with my short tenure here, seeing how the state education department does things, I don't know that I would count on it as strongly as I would, but that's just me.
Yeah, you're right. You could have, and there were circumstances in the other phases occasionally where people went ahead at risk, but that would be their choice, and certainly not something you could insist on. Other comments or questions?
Chairman Richards, it's Mike Schmidt.
Yes.
I think this is I think what we're looking here is for once our board approves it, our board here, then we would bring it to our Board of Education probably in March, so that we would have a seamless, and with their approval, obviously not anticipating that, or not presupposing that, then we would be able to continue the work that we have money to pay for into April. So that way nobody's working without a full approval of our Board of Education as well as the joint board. So if we go first here, then we'll bring the resolution to the March Board of Education meeting, and we would be able to discuss it at the March Finance Committee meeting with the superintendent's obviously approval.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm hoping, Mike. That would work in terms of scheduling. One of the things I know and you and I have talked about, and one of the reasons for working something out with Watts to keep this going is I don't want to lose any more time here. So we've lost a fair amount as it stands, and losing time eventually gets the program out of sync. You've got some steps that don't get done that need to get done. And second of all, it costs us money. There's just no two ways about it. If the delay here ultimately costs us money. So anything we can do to avoid that that's reasonable, we should do. Okay. I don't see or hear any more questions, do I, Kim? And we need to do two separate resolutions here. With respect to the first resolution, the extension of the agreements for the two consultants, that should be amended. That resolution itself should be amended as appropriate to include the fact that it is subject to the work continuing is subject to the availability of funds. And we'll have our attorney work on that to make sure it's in there in the appropriate format. So with that understanding, I will entertain a motion to approve it.
This is Rich. I'll move it as amended.
Jesse Sampson, any further questions or comments? If not, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Good, thank you. The second is the acceptance of the Watts SWBR approval for extended work. Again, that will be amended to reflect the fact that the continuance of the work is subject to the availability of the funds. And we'll have that modified in the appropriate manner in the resolution. Again, I'll entertain a motion to approve that. I'll move it. Jesse moved it.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And thank you very much. Okay, it was a little complicated, but get through it. Speaking of money we have available to us, the next item that's on here is going to take a little chunk of that, but not too much. It's really a piece of phase 2 that's left over and needs to get resolved. In phase 2, why don't we show that chart? Because I think the chart would be further. And there you go. This is school 4. So the little dots, the red dots, represent properties around school 4 that during the course of phase 2 were acquired. The idea here was twofold. To provide some, reduce some pressure on school 4 with respect to available property. It's one of those schools that's in the densely populated portion of the city, and it does not have a lot of room around. The second issue that came up in the course of that was removing some properties that were derelict and they had been added to the poor impression with respect to the school, particularly when we thought the kids were let out of the buses or if they went to school other days. After all the money and effort that went into improving the school and modernizing the area surrounding it should be as pleasant as possible. That all of that was voted on, dealt with in some detail. There was a lot of planning that went into it in phase 2, and most of which has been implemented, or is, at least in terms of requiring the property, has been implemented. And that's what you can see from the stars. There's one piece of property that was part of the original resolution that was the board voted to acquire that did not get completed, and that's what we're asking to get resolved today to finish off this issue. You can point that out. I guess you look at the bottom. There you go, Kim. Kim is now it's that little piece of property right there. The property has been abandoned for a number of years now. The agreement to purchase it is in place. You can actually show us a picture of it, I believe. And you know, this is an example of what I mean. This is right smack across the street from the main entrance of that school. And you know, to me, it's a shame to have that greeting the kids coming and going from that school. Now that's a personal opinion. You wouldn't necessarily do it because that's how I feel about it. And in any case, we already agreed to buy it. So what I'm proposing we do here is with respect, and this is part of the conversation about what funds are available to us. Since there's some dispute with respect to whether SED will authorize the use of the other funds with respect to it, we do have funds of our own we can use. It's $45,000, and we should use the settlement funds we have available to us and complete the purchase. And then the property will be demolished. What happens around the school with us now a number of open lots around the school is something over time. That's an example of it. That's something over time that the city and the district will work out together. Remember, the property that the district doesn't claim and operate reverts to the city. The city is actually the owner of the asset in this case, and it's the city who negotiated the purchase here and finalized the transaction, or will finalize the transaction. So, in order to finish this off and keep the intention, or put the intention in place, and not have this derelict property continue to deteriorate where it is, I'm proposing that we use $45,000 out of the the settlement funds that are available to the board to complete the purchase. The final resolution of what happens with the property once it's torn down will be a matter that the city and the district will work out between. Anything else on this, folks? I went over there myself. I've been over there before and drove around it. School looks good. And there's a fair amount of open property now around the edge of it because of those properties that were acquired from before. So there are ways to use this appropriately that will add to the school itself. As an editorial comment, one of the things that we won't have much opportunity to do because in phase 3, mostly we're dealing with high schools and most of them have property around them. But one of the things we have to realize is that these schools were built at a time when kids weren't bused. You know, you didn't have the busing issue to deal with, where they went home for lunch. You know, where there was no real concept or no necessity to provide recreational area and other things around the school. So most of them are just wedged into a neighborhood. The neighborhoods in many of those cases have deteriorated now or have developed other kinds of problems. And so to me, it's just a shame we shouldn't be able to provide as much open space and recreational area around these schools as we can. But, you know, and this was an attempt, obviously, to try to start at least to deal with that issue. Okay, questions or comments about this?
Yeah, I have a question about the, so this is the acquisition cost. What's the demo?
The city usually takes care of that. The city has a standing contract for demolition, and they demolish a lot of schools. Not schools, excuse me. Demolish a lot of properties. They demolished the other properties that you saw that were acquired. In terms of cost of that, ordinarily the city has just absorbed it, but we have to negotiate that. I guess we will when we get to that problem. But you're right.
Is there a timing on their demolition schedule? They've got a couple of years.
We'll have to get in the queue, but it's not that bad.
Okay.
It's not years.
Okay.
But it could be a while. I mean, they've really attacked this problem.
Yeah. And
have a system, and they have an open contract with respect to it, you know, that they can use to draw down on and demolish properties. So
the sooner we can complete the purchase.
Yeah, let's hope.
Get on the list, the sooner
It would be gone now, because as you can see, the other properties are gone.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions?
Chairman, this is Rich. I would just point out that the resolution does say that the RJSCB hereby approves and authorizes demolition of the acquisition property by the city, with the cost of same being reimbursed to the city through the AG settlement fund. So I just want to make sure we're clear about that. Depending on where we might be with our existing contract, that's the resolution is set up for reimbursement.
Yeah, the reason is I was a little hesitant about that is that I'm not sure whether we paid for it already or not. But because we did pay, there was an arrangement with respect to the demolition of the other properties. And then this thing for some reason didn't get sold. So it's going to take some research to figure out what the exact status of that is.
Yeah, I'm comfortable we can make it work. I mean, Director Jones is in finance and she would be able to look from that, and then I'd be able to look on our end if we had something where we put out a work order for demolition of X number of structures, and you can clearly tell those are city-owned lots around it by the wooden bollards. So, but I think we'll be able to look back. That shouldn't be too far in the past. But your point's well taken. We certainly don't want to be, double invoicing the Joint Schools Construction Board.
Okay, other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the acquisition of the property according to the resolution that's there, and the payment from the settlement funds.
I'll move it.
Second,
No. Second, Run.
okay, other questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. That gets us back to the regular agenda here. We're gonna have to make another change in the agenda a little bit here, because the last item on the action item is the approval of the settlement with respect to the Cannon dispute, which is one of the items you saw in the fund balance description before. We have good news there. So while it's the settlement of an active lawsuit, so we're gonna have to go into executive session to discuss the circumstances with respect to it and the nature of the reason for the settlement. But we'll have to come back out of executive session then and actually vote on the resolution, which was in the packet and distributed to you. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss the settlement of active litigation. So moved by Jesse. Need a second? Got a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
I will just need one moment to put us in breakout.
Okay, we're gonna
Just a
go.
point of process here. You all are going into executive session. You're gonna come back out. Do I stay on or do I go off and then enter back in? What's the process?
The process will be, if everything goes well, Kim will put the board into a separate section of the Zoom, and you can stay right where you are.
Okay, all right,
Come back
thank
out.
you.
Either that or we'll disappear into Zoom link. Never be heard from again.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Pause record. Ready.
That,
Yes.
thank you. We should be back in regular session. There's a resolution in the packet that was circulated to you in advance.
It was after the
Pardon me?
packet. It was after the packet, so it's not in.
Oh, it's not in the stuff, but it was circulated.
No, they,
No, oh, I'm sorry, okay, so we're gonna put it up here, because there was a resolution that the
Mhm.
attorneys had prepared for. We're gonna, as soon as we can find it here, we're gonna put it up for everybody to see, a resolution with respect to the settlement of the pending litigation with Canon. It looks like it. The board went into executive session to discuss the settlement and did so thoroughly. We had, of course, discussed the status of this litigation a number of times in the past. I'm pleased to report that we have reached a settlement with Canon. The numbers with respect to the settlement are that Canon would apply $200,000 against, as a credit, against the amount that's outstanding and owed to them. The result will be that we will be able to contribute another $200,000 to the funds available for reducing the debt in phase two. This is a phase two issue. But this matter, we went through a series of settlement discussions over this. We had a all-day session with respect to trying to resolve it. The resolution you see here is a result of that. It would have been a very difficult matter to litigate since it's the sum of a lot of small claims. But nonetheless, we felt it important to pursue it because we felt that the board was owed something with respect to the performance here. And ultimately, we're able to prevail. The good news is that this resolves the last of the outstanding disputes for either phase one or phase two. And we can close out all of the issues that are open with respect to those disputes. You've seen some of them carried in the fund balance that Kim has reported on periodically. With that information, I'll stop and ask if there are any questions or comments from the board.
Chairman Richards, real quick, it's Mike Schmidt. I think also former Commissioner Jones should be really commended on this too. He's the one that really kind of started the ball rolling with this and held them to account. Probably had the first conversation about this in one of our previous meetings. So we should certainly recognize him and his efforts in this too.
Yeah, we're talking about Norm Jones, Kim's husband, actually. You're right. He was the guy that pushed it, and this is a vindication of the efforts he made. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mike.
I think Rich has got a house for him over on Sam and McCree
Yeah.
as a parting gift.
We got a place for you, Norm.
Well, with Mike's comments, it seems probably fitting. If it's okay, I'd like to move it.
Thank you. It's been moved. Do we have a second? Or we need a second?
A second.
Seconded. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
It passes. The end of an era. Actually, at one point in time, Mike, Norm was so mad about the way things were going with respect to those properties we were acquiring school for. I think we could have used Norm to single-handedly knock the damn thing down.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, that takes care of the action items we had here tonight. I've already covered the phase two fund balance report and the disposition of fund balances, so that's behind us. We covered that in the earlier presentation. Phase three considerations here, the comprehensive plan status. I'll say a little something about it, and then maybe Mike, you want to chip in. The work that's been done by Watts, that was supposed to be done by Watts for this part of the plan, is essentially done. They're meeting to finish some of it, in fact, tomorrow or Wednesday, excuse me. The plan is now going to move into the second phase, and we've talked about that. The preparation is now going to move into the second phase, and we've talked about that with respect to the extension of the Watts contract earlier. So, and the schools, as you know, that are to be renovated have been at least selected with respect to where we are in the plan right now. So we're okay there. Where we're not doing as well is with respect to the FMP for the project management. That has wound up to be an extended discussion with SED about it. We had hoped to be out on the street months ago, we're not. I guess the good news there is that there's supposed to be a meeting about it this week, and hopefully that will resolve it. We have received comments and other kinds of questions about it that have been responded to, so hopefully we're in a situation where we can, we can get this RFP out on the street. And Jesse and his committee worked hard on it. Very little was changed with respect to it. So it was not a problem with the preparation. I have to admit, I think one of the things we need to do, the next step here that we're going to have to show some concern about, is what kind of response we're gonna get. I'm a little worried about it. I'm a little worried that we're not gonna get a vigorous response. There are a couple reasons for that. One of them is it's a kind of a complicated role. It's not your standard architect, engineer, or construction manager. It's a different kind of project. And it will require not just the whoever gets the work, but it will require them to assemble a group of consultants that support the effort in some fashion. So it's not easy. Yeah, that's one reason to be concerned about it. And the other reason to be concerned about it is it comes with all kinds of overhead. You know, you've got so many masters here that you know, people, I think, who might do this otherwise may be steered away. Just that it's too complicated, too difficult to deal with, and too easy to get in trouble with respect to it. I hope I'm wrong, and we're gonna do everything we can to, you know, to make sure that that's not the case. And, you know, after all, in the end, we only need one good one. But how much competition that will generate, I'm a little unsure about. But, you know, we'll know soon if prospects of releasing the RFP are, as I suggested, maybe the case, are cleared this week, then we'll be on the street next week. And the process will start. So I hope that's the last time I have to report that to you. Yeah,
Tom?
yeah.
Yeah, if I could just chime in just for a second, I'll just say that there is a scheduled meeting. We did get some feedback from the from the revisions that we sent forward to the state on Friday after our meeting. And Carmine and Ruth, Jaime, Alisea, we're meeting with Christina tomorrow at 2:00. And I'm hoping at that meeting, we'll get the okay to send it out. So fingers crossed.
Good, thanks, Linda.
Yep.
That's Linda Simmons, who's been very helpful on this, by the way, and very patient. So we appreciate it. There's been a lot of good work actually done by people in the district to help this thing along. And you know, it's important to all of us. Anything else on that? Mike, do you want to say anything about it?
No, you articulated it perfectly.
Any other business to bring before us? Hearing or seeing none? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We stand adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman Richards. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right.